Welcome back to Northwest City Politics in the Know with Juanita. We're so happy that you've joined our show again this evening. We're always happy for people like you that are interested in what's happening in the cities in our area. Because it is important for good government that there be a flow of information back and forth between the city staff, the city council, and the residents. So people do need to hear from you. They need to hear what's good about your city, as well as things that you'd like to see changed. If you haven't watched our show before, each week we'll have someone on from one of the 9 cities in Northwest Community Television's viewing area to update us on what are the current issues that are happening in the city. And we do encourage you to take down emails, take down phone numbers, because if any of the issues really resonate with you, then be in contact with your city council and your mayors. Now tonight, we're very happy to welcome Mayor Kathi Hempen back on our show again.
Oh, thank you.
You're an ongoing ambassador for your city, right?
Oh, I am.
And we always enjoy having you on our show to give us a little more information about what's happening.
Oh, thank you. I like being here. Anything we can tell the residents is a good thing.
Right. And then, because you've been on before, you know that I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself out to our wider audience. Tell them a little bit about yourself. People in New Hope would have a lot of information about you, but other people might not.
Okay. Well, I was on the Planning Commission for 11 years. I chaired it for a couple of years. I've been a resident of New Hope for 40 years. I'm a widow. I have 6 kids, 4 stepchildren and 2 of my own. And I've got 11 grandchildren, 5 great-grandchildren. So I've been around children for a long, long time, and I love being around children. I love the city. I think it's vibrant. I think it's important that the residents love the city, and if they don't, they need to contact us and tell us what's wrong that they don't love it.
Right, right. That's why we were talking about flow of information.
Yep.
It is important. Now we'll switch topics and we'll talk a little bit about scattered site housing. A lot of people might not be real familiar with what does the term mean or what's involved in New Hope's scattered site housing program.
I have to back up just a little bit and talk about the funding for the program.
Okay. Oh yeah,
and then
because I wanted to
get
mention
into
that. Right.
There's something called the Community Development Block Grant, and they use the initials, and I can never remember how they go, but I know the words, Community Development Block Grant. And the state gives the cities, all of us, a bit of money, and the idea is for us to use it where we think it makes the most sense. And so we hired a young man not too long ago in community development, and he brought this idea to us that we could use this money to buy distressed homes.
Okay.
And there's a lot of homes, New Hope is 50 years old.
Right.
And a lot of the people that bought those original little homes have either moved out or died. And in some cases, the kids have inherited the houses.
Sure.
They live out of state. They're not keeping them up. And so this becomes a real depressed, blighted piece of property.
Oh, yeah.
And if that's your neighbor and that piece of property, it's pretty frustrating.
Definitely.
And so this young man, Aaron is his name, went out and scoured around finding houses that people were willing to sell. We can't take them with eminent domain. They have to be willing to sell the house. And we're not going to pay full value for the house because basically we're going to tear it down.
Right.
Because these houses usually have mold, they have other problems. So he goes out and scouts. We have at the moment, I think we've bought 7 houses, torn them down. 3 of those were big double lots, and so we were able to sell the lots, divide it and sell 2 lots.
Right.
So we take this community development grant money and buy the house. We have our people sometimes tear it down. If we can, we use the house for police training.
Oh, right.
But not fire training because it's kind of dangerous to have a fire in a residential.
Yeah.
So we use it for police training. Tear the house down, clean the land, sell it to the developer with the idea that they're going to put a single-family home there. And we ask that they have a buyer before they put the home there. We don't want developers building houses to rent. We want them building houses for families. Now we've been doing this with Habitat for Humanity for probably 10 years.
Oh, sure.
But it's only been the last couple years that we've had these community block grants that we're using them for the scattered
yeah, because
sites.
you could use them for other kinds of things that help people.
We could, and we do. What's
Right.
happened with the houses, though, it's interesting. We sell the lots. In a lot of cases, we're actually putting more money into the pot than we took out.
Right,
'Cause
right.
especially when we
Yeah,
divide a lot.
yeah.
So this little pot is not shrinking. It's just kind of managing itself, and I think that's a good thing. Now, how we get these houses, which is interesting. Sometimes the kids or people will call us.
Right.
Sometimes the neighbors will call and say, "There's nobody there. The house looks pretty bad.
Right.
Can you check on it?" And so we do some checking. We've had a couple that they've actually called us and said, "I want the city to buy the house." If the price is reasonable on
Yeah.
our terms, then we do. If they, if it's overpriced, of course, we say
Yeah.
no, thank you.
Right.
Because it's your money and mine.
Right.
It's doing this. So we're very careful what we buy. The original thought was to fix them up, but we found that if we buy the really distressed ones first and tear them down,
Oh, sure.
that makes more sense. Now, sooner or later, we'll have all those distressed properties torn down
Right.
and rebuilt. Then maybe we'll go on to the ones where we're going to refurbish. But right now, we're still doing the
Right.
distressed ones.
Yeah, so it is a real way to improve neighborhoods.
Oh, not only improve the neighborhood, but improve the tax base. So as we're
right,
taking a
right.
tiny little rundown house and we're putting, or we're not, but the developer is putting in
Right.
a really nice house. And we've worked with a couple developers. We know they're good. One of them is a guy that does work in Crystal, so we've seen the product. There's another new one that's coming, Regal Homes. And one of our council members saw that product and said, they're good.
Right.
So we want to put a house there that isn't going to be a mega mansion.
Right.
We want it to fit into the neighborhood. And we want the neighbors to be happy that it's there.
Right.
And we've been really successful in the 10 that we've built.
And so it's going to be a program that'll go on into the future.
It will, we'll keep getting, each year we get a little money. And, if we get too much money in this pot, oh, heavens forbid, we'll use it for other things.
Right.
We'll use it for the community
so
things.
in essence, then the program isn't taking money out of the city. It's
No.
it's using a fund of money to improve.
Improve
Right.
not only improve the looks of the city, but improve the tax base.
Right.
And that's important too.
And the neighborhoods, so that
And the neighborhoods too.
it helps, I'm sure, with the value of the property around them.
Yep. So we think it's a good program. It seems to be working real well. The neighbors who live by these distressed houses are thrilled
Right.
because they no longer have to look at this house that is in disrepair. The bad news is it takes a long time. So a lot of times these houses have liens on the property. They have second mortgages. We have to get those liens taken care of before we buy the property.
Right.
We have to, if it's in foreclosure, that takes a long time in
Yeah.
itself. So it seems, I know people get real frustrated. They think we ought to just buy it and tear it down and build the next day.
Right.
It takes sometimes up to a year
Oh, yeah.
to get all the legalities, and we don't want to buy property that has a lot of liens on it.
No.
Because then we're stuck with the liens.
Right.
So we want a clean title, and then when that happens, then we step in and buy the property if it's still for sale.
So it really takes a lot of activity on the part of the community development part.
Oh, yeah,
For the city.
My community development team works at this a lot because they have to make sure that they have to research the liens, they have to research the mortgages. They want to make sure that when it comes back as a clean title, that it is clean. So they do a lot of work you don't even see to get that house so we can tear it down. The tear down is a week.
Right.
But it's a year to get to that tear down.
Right.
It takes a long time.
So that if anybody out in the city of New Hope has a property like that in their neighborhood, then the city really wants to hear about it.
They can call me.
Right.
They can always call me about anything.
Sure.
But they can also call the city and ask to talk to the community development team. They'll give them to our community development director and just discuss what they've got.
Right.
We may or may not be interested.
Right.
Depending, of course, on the price. But it helps when other people see stuff and they tell us.
Oh, right,
'Cause
right.
We just can't be driving up and
No,
down the
right.
streets looking for houses.
Now, Northwood Lake, which is along Boone between 42nd and 36 for people that don't live in the area, was the scene of a lot of construction this summer.
Oh, my.
I just drove by there today, and the barrels are gone.
Two kinds of construction. The park, first of all, we put in a 160,000 gallon tank. That's a big tank. And the reason we sunk it into the ground because we didn't want to take up any park space. What this tank does is it collects stormwater coming down Boone, and it kind of filters it out, filters the pieces of the junk out.
Right.
And then we use that water to water the ball fields in the park. It's really a way to get all that stuff that's flowing down the street was just going into the lake before.
Right.
And the lake was getting full of a lot of leaves and just junk.
Right.
So this filters that all out. If the tank gets too full, it kind of overflows into a couple rain gardens before it goes into the lake. And by doing this, the Bassett Creek Watershed, which really manages Bassett Creek, and that's Northwood Lake is on Bassett Creek, they gave us some amount of money to do this project, and they're watching to see how it works.
Kind of a joint project and a new idea, isn't it?
Yes, it's a very new idea, and it was a joint project, but it made a mess of the park, of course.
All summer long.
When you put in a tank that big, of course you have to take the trees down.
Right.
A lot of the trees that we took down, though, were elms, or not elms, ash.
Oh, right.
And so we kind of know that we're going to get that ash borer.
Right, it's
bug.
coming.
It's coming.
Yeah.
It's in some trees already. So they were ash trees. There were a couple older pines. There were some just scrub trees. There was one pretty little cherry tree, though. That was kind of sad. It's always sad when you take down big trees.
It is. It is.
Whether they're scrub trees or pretty little trees. They said in the park anyway, they will replace the trees 2 for 1. Because when you take down a big tree and you put in a little tree, it looks kind of bare. And so of course they will reseed that all. They have this blow seed stuff they put on. They also put in some trails around, and then we'll get new park equipment. When we do the park equipment, we call out the neighbors in the area to come to a meeting and help us pick out what do they want to see.
Right.
The neighbors know how old the kids are. The neighbors know what the kids might be liking at that moment. And so we try to accommodate what the neighbors want. We have a budget that we adhere to, and the neighbors know this, so they get the equipment and they kind of fiddle around with it until they get as much equipment as they can for the budget that they have. And so now that we're waiting for Duck Duck Days to get over to put that equipment in. We usually put the equipment in last because we don't want the kids in the park without the equipment there. We don't want the equipment there until the park is ready because the kids come home all full of mud. So it's kind of in joint with each other. So that's what was happening on Boone and in the park. So now let's move a little bit further south to the other side of the lake. From the lake to 36th Avenue, and from Boone over to Hillsborough. That's a big area.
It is.
Those streets were real curvy and windy and beautifully covered with trees. 50 years ago, when those streets were put in, the trees were put right at the street line. And they were the wrong kinds of trees. So they were trees that had roots that went into the water lines. So we were having a lot of water main breaks along there.
In that whole area,
It's very expensive when we have water main breaks because we have to go in and bring the crew. They always happen on Christmas Eve, of course. So we have something called a pavement management plan, and they look at the water main breaks on different streets. Those streets needed to be repaired. When you do that, you dig down probably 6 to 8 feet straight down, which means you're cutting through all those roots. When you cut through roots of trees, they're either going to fall in
they don't do well
on our workers, or they're going to die within a year. The team that does this knows this, and so we had to take out an awful lot of trees. To me, it was very sad. It was very sad for the neighbors. But some things just have to happen, and to fix those streets, the only way to fix them was to put in the new water mains, put in the new sewers and the storm sewers, take down the trees. So we will replace all the trees that we took down with suitable trees, the ones that have deeper roots that won't necessarily go and spread out into the water mains. The project is just about done. We started on Ensign, I believe, and they're kind of working their way to the west. So the curbs are in, the streets are in, they need an extra layer of blacktop. That may come this year, it may not come till next year.
Right.
They're starting to repair people's lawns by putting some dirt and then spraying the stuff. But with this hot weather, they don't want to be putting in the grass seed till the weather gets a little better. So they're trying to repair the yards, and that grass seed will come in. And then of course we have to depend on the citizens to water. We hire trucks to go down the street and water, but they don't water every day.
Right.
And when you've got brand new grass, you need to be watering a
do.
lot.
Yeah, you do.
So street by street we're working. Now, because it was such a big project, we actually had to bond for this. Most of the time when we do a mill and overlay, what we do is we don't assess our properties.
Right.
You pay a little extra in taxes, and that goes to our street management plan.
Which is different than almost all the other cities in the area, right?
So when they fix the street in front of your house, you don't get a bill. Now, even these people that just had their whole street repaired, they're not going to get a bill either. We did have to bond for this. We got some money, but it was a large bond. But we thought these streets needed to be repaired, and if you're going to repair them, if we were going to start at one side, we didn't want to repair one street this year and this one the next year. Once you've got that team out there doing the work, it's a lot more cost effective to do it all.
The looks of the park are still going to change from what it looks like now, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to focus on.
Well, there'll be these rain gardens.
Right.
Because we wanted to put a path there and fill in some of the soggy parts, but apparently that's part of, like, the watershed wouldn't let us do that. So we had to carefully put the path somewhere else. So we weren't able to fill in some of that soggy land, so we put a rain garden in there. And that was acceptable to the watershed. We left a lot of the hills because that's part of the charm of that park. It'll get grassed over. We'll put the trees in first. So if there were 5 trees, we're going to put in 10. But they'll be small. You have to know that they'll be small. They'll be pretty little trees, and they'll grow up to be big trees. And then it'll be, once the equipment, the playground equipment's in. And the playground equipment's all different. There's a couple of zip lines going in, which will be kind of fun. The neighbors wanted that. So just some fun things that the kids will enjoy playing on. So the park will look different than it did, but it'll be just as functional, and it'll still be a playground. And hopefully the lake will be a little bit cleaner because of it.
And the whole focus from the watershed district is to help clear the water.
Yep.
Now let's go back to the pavement management, because I thought we could talk about the plans that New Hope has, because you've been recently working on kind of like a 5-year plan. Tell us a little bit about how you decide what you're going to work on and when.
Well, we've had a 5 and 10-year plan for a long time. You can't do all the streets. There's 6.5 miles. There's like 83 miles of streets in New Hope, or some number like that. So you have to have a plan. And we have a system of pavement. They measure the pavement. Some places, when the pavement was put in 10 years ago, wasn't as deep. And so that didn't wear as well. So they have this scale that they're using where they measure the pavement and they rate it, and then with that they can tell the streets that need to be done sooner than others. Now what happens though is this street needs to be repaired, but this one might not, right next to it, for 2 years. But if they're in the area, it's very hard to get a contractor to do one here and one over there and one over there. So they take all these numbers from the streets and they kind of block them and say, okay, this has got the worst numbers. And so we'll do this one. This one is going to have to wait till 17 or 18. And this one, and so they have this master plan. But it's flexible. And that's the real key. So if something happens, and something that we were going to do in 19, all of a sudden is a terrible mess. And that's what happened on 49th. If it's a terrible mess, we have to do something now. We will move that up. But of course, when you move that up, everybody else gets moved down. So you have to be very careful that you're not just picking and choosing. Somebody said one time, you just pick the streets you use. Well, we all use all the streets,
Oh, that's
and we
true.
want them all to
That's
look
true.
good. Now, that's separate from the, when they fix potholes.
Right.
That's a little different. We want neighbors to call us and say, there's a pothole in front of my house. Because then I can report that to our public works guys.
Right.
They come out with a big truck and they fill the potholes.
Right.
That's the temporary fix. We know that, the neighbor knows that. It's when they take the whole layer of blacktop off and put
Right.
another layer down. Or they put this black stuff down and put rocks and
Right.
then put a fog coat over it.
Right.
That's just a different kind. And they do that when my street, which is Maryland, doesn't have water main breaks for whatever reason.
Right.
And so I don't get full, I have never gotten full reconstruction. They're able to just put mill and overlay on the street, and they've done that once, and that's just fine. So that's how they kind of decide. The plan, when I say it's a 10-year plan,
Right.
they have this rotating plan that covers all of the streets in
Okay.
the city. So nobody gets left out, but you
So they're
might,
keeping track of all the streets.
Yep.
Okay.
and so you might be on the plan for 2022,
Okay.
but you're on the plan.
Right.
We'll get there. And as streets deteriorate in different degrees, we adjust the plan to meet that. So, people think, well, you guys really don't know what you're doing. We do. We do
Yeah.
have a master plan. I would say, though, that we haven't been assessing as much money as
Okay.
we should. So that's probably going to be something we're looking at down the road. We're going to have to increase the assessment for the roads, because when you look at the master plan, we don't replace something we don't need to.
Right.
But when you look at that master plan and when you look at the deterioration of some of these streets, which are 50,
Oh,
50
right.
60
Yeah,
years
long
old,
time.
we might have to move it up a little bit.
Right. And so it's really, depending on the condition of the street, they're going to take everything out and start from scratch down at the base and build it up. But then tell what does it mean when you say mill and overlay?
They have this machine that comes through and it basically grinds up the blacktop, mills it off,
Right.
and down to like the sand, and then very often they'll do something in the sides of the road,
Right.
because they really don't want the road to be flat. It has to have a little curve so the water rolls
Will
off.
run off.
And then they'll blacktop over that. And a lot of times they'll blacktop and then they put down rocks, press that in, and then they put down a fog seal to hold the rocks in. They can usually do that within a day or so. So that's a real quick, it sounds like it's a quick fix, but there's a lot of streets. So you just can't fix them all like that on a regular basis. When you have a complete street reconstruct, that means we need a new water main.
Right.
We need a new sewer pipe. We need a storm sewer pipe. At that time, we call Xcel Energy and CenterPoint and say, we're doing the street.
Right.
They come out, they put new lines in, and a lot of times the electrical comes out and puts those in, the fiber optics guys if it needs it in that street. So we coordinate that so that a year from now, they're not coming up and digging up our street to put in
another time around, right?
a new cable.
Right.
Sometimes they have to do that, but we like to at least try to let them know that we're doing that. Now, can I talk about 49th?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to ask. I was just going to say, now we're up to 49th.
49th Avenue was a different kind of thing. The street was in real bad shape. It wasn't scheduled to be fixed for a couple more years. 49th Avenue is what we call a municipal state road. We get money from the state. In return for the money for the state to fix a road like that, we have to allow them to have trucks on the road. Many years ago, they put up, we hadn't taken any state money, and they put up a sign that says no trucks allowed.
Oh, yeah, I remember that sign.
Well, it's a state road. And so as soon as we wanted money to fix this road, they said, you got to take that sign down. You can't have that sign. So, of course, the people on 49th they had gotten used to no trucks.
Yeah.
That was a pretty expensive project, but we got a lot of money. We were able to get our state aid money early for that, because it didn't make sense to just mill and overlay that, because we knew that that wasn't going to last. And because of the trucks that are on there, and you know, it was put in 50 years ago.
Oh, right,
before these
right.
trucks were so heavy and
Right,
so big.
right.
So they needed all of the stuff put back in. So they had to dig this huge, huge pit.
Yeah, they've been working on it all summer, right?
A long time. And then with that, you know, they have to put in new curbs, of course, and they changed the road a little bit, so there's parking on one side and not on the other. We took some of the setback that was on the Cooper side to put in a sidewalk. It's our land,
right?
But you know, there's a 15-foot
Right,
easement.
right.
So rather than take that 15 feet from the residents, we took it from the land over by Cooper.
Right.
And it's still our land. We can do that.
Yeah.
We wanted to protect the integrity of the neighborhood with not as much traffic. So we meandered the street a little bit. We did some things that we can still put it, we have to be able to let trucks ride on it. But we didn't want to make it too convenient. So they'll still get trucks. I'm not anticipating any more truck traffic than they got before. Because truckers knew, even though there was a sign, truckers knew that that was a state aid road.
Right, right.
And by law, they were able to drive on that, whether it said no truck or not.
Right.
So that's just about ready to start getting the top coat put on. You know, the way they start putting the cement back on. But they've lived all summer with just a huge mess. And then of course there's always the kids with the big trucks that think it's fun to ride in the mud and spray mud all over everything. Anyway, so that's just about done. Again, they won't be assessed. The city paid some money for that, but not the total amount, of course. And then we got the state aid money to help do that.
And then very briefly, there's up and coming elections. New Hope has elections for city council.
We do.
So maybe you could just briefly tell us about.
Andy Hoff, Eric Lamley, and I are all running unopposed, and we're just thrilled.
Very unusual.
Now, the way we look at this is people are either very, very happy with what we're doing, or they don't want to get shot at. I'm not sure which. I want to think they're happy with this council. This council is real unique. We get along very well, and when you get along and you're able to compromise, you can get so much more done.
Oh, you can.
When you're constantly arguing with each other, you don't have time to get as much done. And I really contribute a lot of what we've gotten done in New Hope with the fact that we have a council that wants to work with our staff. And they're very good. So the three of us will. You can write in somebody else if you want to, but I can pretty much guarantee that the three of us are going to remain on the council. So the council will stay intact at least until the next election in 2 years.
Well, I want to thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's always wonderful to be here, just to tell citizens what's going on and to be able to talk to you.
And if you live in New Hope, I hope you took down Mayor Hempen's phone number and email and contact her if you've got concerns or things that you want to compliment the city on. We'll see you next week. Bye.